You're here to find out which of the 2025 drivers is the lowest launch, lowest spin, lowest flight. We've got the data for you. It's not Mark and I's opinion. This is coming straight out of the robot. We're going to give you the best information on the market. Stick around. Here's the test. Every low spin model is in 9 degrees, tested at 115 miles an hour, zero path, zero face, zero angle of attack, struck in the center of the golf club. All the weight positions are as far forward as possible, with one caveat being the ping that we didn't want to draw bias by having the weight swing round to the heel too much.
Right.
We've put them all with the same golf shafts that are having the same experience. We've got Glenn in the background who's going to run the robot. We've tested everything back of house, so we've got some average data. But today, live on camera, we're going to hit each club out of the center so you can see the data live, and we'll do some comparisons back and forward. Before we get started, we've got some data to show on screen. Mark's going to take you through some basic numbers.
Yeah, so we got this chart up on the screen. So we've got here the model number. Obviously, there's top and bottom on which one spun the most and less. We've got the MOI. We just listed the heel to toe MOI, which is, I think is the important one, right? That tells you where the ball is going to go. High and low affected a little bit, but obviously it's directionally not such a big deal. You got the CG depth, which actually affects the MOI quite a bit. So all these kind of interrelated. How far back the CG is, the further back it is, the higher MOI. Further forward, you get lower MOI and lower spin. So there's trade-off again. And then we've got actually listed the lie angle. And the lie angle affects right and left quite a bit. It's one of the design characteristics they use to affect how much draw or fade it is. And they're pretty different, actually, some of them. And then we got the CCs, how big they are. Obviously, the bigger they are, the easier to get the high MOI as well. So that affects it. So they're all kind of interrelated. But we'll see what happens on the robot.
Yeah. Well, this is less about our opinion. We try and give as much data as possible. Glenn is going to run a test on the Callaway Triple Diamond to start with. We're going to record it, show you that, and I'll explain a little more as we go. So while we hit this golf shot, I'm just going to run over a little bit of the numbers and why they are what they are and how to think about them. The more upright lie angle is going to help with more draw bias,
right,
which you may need still from a low spin club, depending on your player. The 460, the CCs down to 430 CCs, that's kind of what you want to look down at. Right. And how tall the face is going to be and how big that footprint's going to be all put in one package.
Yep, it's just a shape thing, really. Yeah.
Yep.
But it obviously affects the MOI. Smaller heads are less resistant to twisting. So,
we think there's a correlation between CG depth being closer to the shaft axis and low spin. But it's not set in stone.
No, there's other things going on, so it's not just that.
Okay, and then we put heel to toe in here, like you said, it's about forgiveness, just to give people an idea of like, what's your trade-off? Like,
right,
do you want really low spin, or do you want a bit of both? Do you want low spin and a bit of left to right forgiveness? See what we get. Let's see what the Callaway Triple Diamond does here. And we're going to look at each flight as it goes through the air here, take a look at the chart, and then we're going to compare all of them at the end in one hit. 11.3 degrees launch, 2,800 backspin, and then we've got a peak height of 35 yards. So that's mapped.
Yep.
That's just our baseline test.
Starting point, yeah, anyway. See what the other ones do comparably, right?
Okay, and then we're just going to go in alphabetical order here just to keep things nice and simple.
Okay.
Let's jump into the Cobra DS Adapt LS. So it's their brand new version, the LS. Okay, let's see Glenn hit the DS Adapt. And while he's doing that, this is the Elyte. This is the gloss finish out of all of them.
Yeah, it's actually a little different than the rest of them. I kind of like it, actually. It's really clean looking, you know?
Yeah, and the weight adjustment, it's a 9 gram, as out of the factory, 9 gram out the back and then 4 in the front. Right. And we put 9 in the front, 4 in the back. So there's only 5 grams that you're pushing forward, net weight.
Yeah, it does make a difference though.
Yep.
And so, obviously moving it forward because the lowest spin, so we're trying to get the lowest spin we can, so why not?
Yeah. And it's actually not the highest CC. I think the shape looks good, but the highest CC is the LS. So this is a 450cc. Obviously, we've got 460 in the mix with the Taylormade. The Ping and this are both the same CCs. So it's a decent looking head.
Yeah, it doesn't look big at all. I mean, it's because it's all blacked out too. That helps.
Yeah. Let's have a look at this data here.
Right.
Okay, so now we've got 2 to compare. Considerably lower launch in the Cobra, 9.9, so over about a degree and a half. 2300, so we've got 500 RPMs less than the Triple Diamond. The peak height, we got 28 yards versus 35. That's 7 yards difference.
Yeah, it's just lower. It's probably a lower loft.
Lower. Yeah, I mean, we did see that one year when we measured the Cobra, they were kind of lower loft, but it's just coming out a bit flatter. It compared to the Triple Diamond, compared to the LS, is exactly the same CG, almost exactly the same MOI, same lie angle. It's really just the CCs that you're looking at. It's the difference there.
Yeah, and you're talking about 5cc, so I mean, it's not something you're going to notice looking down at it. The shape it's made is going to have a bigger effect on how big and small it looks rather than just the CCs.
Yeah, but we definitely got a lower flighted driver in that Cobra Adapt so far.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, moving on, we've got the Ping LST.
Yeah, that one's a little different. It's kind of the bigger one of the bunch to some extent. Certainly got a deeper CG and a higher MOI than the rest of them. So
Theory would state that that might be higher. Right?
Yeah, you would think that'd be a higher spinning club for sure, but maybe not.
Let's find out.
Yeah.
So that was the Cobra DS Adapt LS. Glenn's got the Ping in there right now. Glenn, you can give the Ping a run. So this one has got the weight in the heel in the standard position anyway. A bit how we set the Taylormade. Yeah.
Yep.
So they get the CG up naturally.
Right.
And then we've also got a slightly lower CC than the Elyte. Just a hair.
Just a tiny bit, so it's 5
cc.
Yeah, it's tiny, but
yeah,
a little bit smaller.
Yeah.
Don't look much different, to be honest.
No, and you got the gloss versus the matte. I hear that the gloss is from tour player feedback and the matte is not. I actually prefer the matte, personally.
Yeah, I'm kind of mixed on it, to be honest with you. I kind of like the gloss. It looks kind of clean and traditional, like more like Titleist, actually.
Yeah.
But I've always liked kind of matte black. It's not shiny, so it's obviously not going to show scratches and stuff as much either. So some advantages to both.
Yeah. Well, let's check out the data on the Ping. We've got 10.6 degrees of launch, so sitting right between the Callaway and the Cobra.
Right.
2400 sitting right between the Callaway and the Cobra, and the peak height at 31 sitting right between the Callaway and the Cobra. Now it's kind of interesting because the CG is way further back than the
Ping's done a pretty good job with that. I mean, Ping's always been the most forgiving club out there for the most part, year to year, and they've generally had a deeper CG and a bigger MOI. But they've somehow managed to keep the spin relatively low considering they're doing that, which is interesting.
So this has multiple benefits, but we'll touch on that as we snap the next product in, which is going to be the Taylormade QI35 LS. Moving on, that was the Ping LST. We're going into the Taylormade LS QI35 with the weight forward. Glenn, while you rip that one, I really love what they've done with the look of it this year with the carbon on top. Still got the split, but it's nice.
It looks a little cleaner. Obviously, the turbulator, some people love them, some people hate them. They don't really bother me much. No. It's definitely different than the other ones. It's definitely a wider, flatter base. I mean, it's a little shallower top to bottom, and they did that intentionally to get more speed because Ping's always been known for the most forgiving drivers out there, but, obviously, the big face slows it down. So, a little different. A lot of improvements, though.
Further back CG definitely increased launch, but didn't hurt the spin.
That's what's amazing. I mean, it's definitely got a deeper CG than the others by a fair amount, and a slightly higher, MOI as well because of that. But the spin didn't really increase that much.
No, so now we're looking at a low spin forgiving package, so as a standout right now before we see the others.
Yeah, as far as forgiving with, absolutely.
And still 450cc, so it's not the biggest, even though it's got that
No,
nice
it looks
shape.
bigger than the others, like I said, only because it's wider as far as the footprint and not as deep, right? So these look a little squattier.
Okay, well, let's jump in and take a look at the numbers for the QI35. We've got 10.3 launch, so a little lower than the Ping, a little higher than the Cobra. 2300, 2400. Let's not split hairs. Pretty much the same as the Ping.
Pretty much the same,
and then we've got our peak height at 30. So 1 yard lower, 3 feet. I'm not sure you and I would see that in the air.
No, you probably need to get more. I mean, obviously, when we did 10 shots, you get a better idea of that, but that's not enough in one shot to really make a big difference.
Yeah, but now we are seeing a little spread. We've got kind of a mid section, a low section, and a high section with one bad boy left to test. And the Titleist GT4 is, the smallest package, the most forward CG, the weight in the standard setting is up front anyway. It's really been the tour option for spin and kill.
It is the lowest spin one out there as far as how it looks and stuff. Yeah, for sure.
All right, well, let's jump in and do the final test, GT4. Then we're going to conclude by running over the numbers. And then this is what the channel's about. It's up to you to make your decision. We're just giving you the best information on the market. Yep. That was the Taylormade QI35 LS, 9 degree, 115 miles an hour. Moving into last but not least, Titleist GT4. Hopefully you've enjoyed this and you're getting the data that you want. Glenn, go ahead and hit the GT4 when you like. And Mark and I look at this. This is the biggest CC.
Yeah, it doesn't look it. I mean, it's a pretty traditional shape. Obviously, grayed out, looks a little smaller. I like the fact it doesn't have anything on the front here.
Me too.
Some of the other clubs always have turbulators or a line here. I kind of like the clean wrap. It looks really nice.
We're not allowed favourites, but I really do like the look of the top of this thing this year.
Yeah, I do too. It's definitely different and really clean looking. Like there's no marks at all on the top other than just the small little T in the middle.
Yeah.
And the shape's really nice.
Awesome. Well, let's see what this GT4 is up to, flying through the air. Okay, so this is only the one-shot test that we've just hit, so we've got more data to conclude on.
Yep.
But we've got the Titleist there launching at 9.5, so the lowest launching out of the batch, spinning at 2300. Not the lowest spinning in this test. It's identical to the Taylormade, a hair higher than the Cobra, and then the peak height at 28, which is an identical height to the Cobra.
Right.
So both the lowest flight there are the Cobra, Dark Speed, DS Adapt LS, and then the Titleist GT4 are the lowest flight. Just
Yeah, well, it's coming from the launch angle for the most part.
Yeah.
Right? So it's a little bit lower launching.
So that was one portion of the test. We've tested one shot on each one, which is something, but that's not how we do it at Cool Clubs. We're scientific.
No.
So we've done a multiple shot test out of the center location for each driver, just the same as we did that same test. But when you collect more data, you get better results. So hang around and we're going to run over our final piece of data, which is the larger test. Well, this is the data that we are going to give to our fitters to use in our fitting, which is more important. You know, it's consistent. It gives the average. So let's jump in and we'll start from the highest spinning first. And there's a couple of ways to talk about spin. So it's we're just looking at just RPMs. The highest spinning out of the batch, and this is obviously not relatively high spin, was the Callaway Elyte Triple Diamond on our test, our bigger test, 2700, 2800 RPMs, with a spin launch, and you can explain that a little, of 278.
Right. So it is actually the highest spinning one, and it's obviously not quite as low a spinning as the last year's model, which was smaller. This is more forgiving, and certainly looks a little bigger too, which is good. More like the Max from last year.
Yeah. Callaway's peak height was 32 yards. That's where it sits. In the fourth position of peak height was the Ping at 31.4 yards, so almost an identical height to that. But the RPMs for the Ping were not dead, you know, in order. So they actually spun at 2400, 2395. Moving on, number 3 in terms of ball flight height, this is the visual we're going to see in the air, 29 yards was the Cobra, and that was actually the second highest in terms of spin, but only by a margin.
Yeah, they're all low.
We're talking 30 RPMs potentially above the last one. Moving on from that, we've got in second position the Taylormade QI35 at 28.6 yards in the air. Great looking thing with this grey carbon this year. The spin rate 23,675. We're talking an average of 60 RPMs less, so it's completely splitting hairs between this and the Cobra.
Yeah, it's not a lot.
No. And then our winner, the lowest spin-in driver of 2025 in this category. Bearing in mind, we're not testing every driver in the world right now, and under these parameters of 115 mile an hour, 000, is the Titleist GT4 9-degree version. It launched at 9.8 degrees and it spun at 2145. So this one actually did have a nudge. There was a couple of hundred RPMs less than all of them, and even more than that, less than the last place.
Right, but if you look at it, the Ping actually is basically exactly the same spin launch number. So it launches a little higher, but they kept the spin just as low relative to how much you launch it. So both of those are kind of really the winner for the low spin, in my opinion.
And that's the real nugget in there. That's 219 RPMs to every 1 degree of launch that you go up the rack. The Ping also has call it an advantage, a lure to it, that it is a higher CC. It has got a higher MOI from heel to toe. So we're not here to tell you what driver to buy. We're here to give you the best information so you understand.
In theory, it ought to be the most forgiving out of the bunch. You know, we've got to test the robot and see where the ball actually goes, which is the end all, right? I mean, you look at MOI and CG depth, all those are indicators, but where does it actually happen? So, interesting.
And the Titleist flight, just for clarifying, was 25.9, 26 yards high, a couple of yards lower than everything else. From top to bottom, excuse me, with 6 yards in flight change throughout this matrix.
That's not a lot.
Not crazy, right?
No, especially not 150 miles an hour, and it's getting up pretty high, right?
Yes.
If you're talking about 75 miles an hour, then
that's
a big difference, right?
Yeah, good point. We hope you enjoyed this video. We're here to provide you the best content. We hope you provide us the best feedback. Like us, subscribe us, tell your friends. We're going to do more. Hang around. We've got draw bias tests coming. We've got high flight, high spin tests coming. We've got everything you want. Keep putting in the comments because we're going to keep testing. We're here for you guys.